Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is looking at the full moon in Aquarius occurring on August 11th at 8:36 p.m. Central Standard Time. But if you live in Europe and other places overseas from the United States, it will be on August 12th. In almanac.com, they have, which is the old almanac, they list the names for these full moons. I always enjoy talking about these. They mention that in addition to North America, these names are derived from the Northern Europeans, but I don't think that these names would be in particular because they really do seem tied to the United States, or you could include maybe Mexico and Canada, so North America, in this or with this, because one of the names was the Sturgeon Moon for this particular moon. And in reading the explanation, they mention that the sturgeon fish is coming from the Great Lakes region. I'm near Chicago, and Lake Michigan is one of those Great Lakes. I don't know if they have sturgeon fish in it, but I'm assuming they do somewhere in it. But anyway, that's one of the names. The other one that I saw was the corn moon, and corn originates from Mexico. So that indicates that the corn has come to harvest. Just last week, when I went to the farmer's market, I bought my first fresh, local corn of the year, and it was nice to dig into that. I love corn, especially fresh corn and GMO free corn, of course. So there was that, and so it definitely is the time for that corn harvest. And I also, speaking of harvest, one of the tribes called this the harvest moon. I can't remember which one. I don't have that window open. And so that indicates that there it is the harvest in a certain respect. Usually the harvest moon is in September or October, if I'm not mistaken, in a more broad way. I will, the harvest moon is associated with September or October. I don't know if it has something to do with the equinox or not when it takes place. I think it does. But anyway, this is going to be a supermoon, the last supermoon of 2022. I do want to say, and I do want to ask you guys, if you felt that the Capricorn supermoon that happened on July 13th or thereabouts was particularly intense for you, because right after that, it activated a certain period in my life, and especially through my partner, but I was affected to personally myself, of like a lot of intensity, emotional intensity. It fell in my ninth house, and I think if I really want to reflect upon it, that it was asking of me, do you have this faith, that you claim, that you speak about, and it has a connection to God? Do you really have this? Or is it just a bunch of pretty words or empty talk? You know what I mean? And I've had to draw upon that faith in different ways in the past few weeks. And, there are different ideas on the timing of these new and full moons, like how long are the effects. But you can certainly say, and I have read that from one full moon to the next, that is one particular phase. So if you felt that this was an intense period for you as well, then perhaps you will see an easing of that in some way by the time of this Aquarius full moon. I think also because that one was in Capricorn, and Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. Saturn can be seen as, um, testing us. So wherever it showed up in your chart, that might have been an area where you felt like you had to really rise to the occasion and kind of transcend the whatever was happening on the mundane level to really deal with what was going on. So we need to talk about, what does Aquarius represent? Aquarius is the ruler of the 11th house, and the 11th house deals with the collective. And I have talked about, and other astrologers have talked about, what is going on right now in our society and things coming to a head. And I have certainly listened to astrologers, energy readers, whatever you want to call different types of people who are prophesizing the future events, which is a tricky thing to do, obviously. And I don't consider myself a fortune teller or anything like that, or a psychic. I just look at what's going on and try to get a pulse for what the energy surrounding it is. And so, but I've heard some things sometimes that seem kind of sensationalized about, and maybe I even did a little bit of that, uh, you gotta do the clickbait, right? But I mean, not to be um, misleading or anything, but based upon what actually the chart or the influences showed. It's just a marketing technique, but it really was what it showed. But did it transpire some of these things? I haven't been able to see any times this year in 2022 when some of these grandiose predictions have come to pass that other people have made. And and yet, in a certain way, it has been gradually happening where things have been slowly being revealed. And I'm sure there's a lot happening behind the scenes, so we can't say that's a complete bust. So the bottom line is, in looking at all of this, I feel as though one of the things that, if you want to call them conspiracy theorists or whoever, a term coined by the CIA to marginalize people from kind of speculating on, connecting the dots and things like that, by the way, that the internet would go down at some point, and that might indicate that was when these operations were occurring, that we're going to maybe contain rogue forces, let's put it that way. Now, Aquarius, the 11th house, Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, also Saturn, but that's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to technology. And Uranus is connected to technology, so the 11th house has that connection to the internet because it's also the collective. So the collective plus technology equals the internet. So could this be when the internet goes down at some point in this kind of, sort of mid July, August period? Maybe, possibly, we could say that. Full moons can be the time when something comes to a head, meaning that a lot has been happening, maybe behind the scenes, and then it finally comes to that crisis point. It also can be an attainment. So it can be this thing that is quite like a goal that is reached, which has a more positive connotation. So both of those are possibilities. But yes, so keep this in mind. And some of you may have been aware that there have been certain sites like Facebook and maybe YouTube. I can't remember. Earlier this year that have gone down for a while. I remember. I think it was Facebook, but there was one of these big sites that went down for a long time one day. And even like other things that supposedly had glitches that, you know, had an internet connection. I don't remember what particular sites they were, but like giving people their benefits, like if they have things like food stamps in Illinois, we call those link cards, or their EBT, what does that stand for? Electronics benefits transfer or whatever, where they went down, and that was not necessarily this year, but other years. And it almost seemed like it was kind of like a test run where they were seeing how people would react to it. And people reacted very chaotically when they were going to try to buy something with their EBT cards and they were declined. So, think about our society these days. How many of us use our debit cards way more than we use cash? And it's very interesting because I remember last weekend I tried to buy something at a cafe, and I was downtown in downtown Chicago trying to buy something, and I remember walking to the place and thinking, gee, I wonder if they'll accept my card. Or no, wondering if they would accept cash, and they only accepted cards. And and so, it goes both ways. Sometimes they don't accept cards, sometimes they don't accept cash. But lately, I've been seeing like card only places. This was a very big when there was a lot of lockdown stuff because they didn't want to handle cash. And so they went to card only, and some have just continued to do so. Um, there's always going to be benefits for that because then it's harder to steal. When you have cash, you can just pocket money. It's harder to steal when you got that. You know what I mean? So it has its benefits, but then, of course, it's easier to control people through that. So, yeah, we'll see what happens if this is the time when there's going to be a blackout. People have been talking online about, okay, what are the alternative communications that we're going to use? Ham radios, I think, were discussed, and walkie-talkies. And there are actually long-range walkie-talkies, and I remember even years ago wondering, why do you have to register in the United States your walkie-talkie with the FCC, the Federal Communications, whatever the other C stands for. But maybe that's to regulate who gets to talk, who is talking on these bands and why. So let's talk about some of the aspects and all the placements. Mercury is in Virgo, one of the signs that it rules. So communication can be of a practical nature, which again, that can be very helpful if we are trying to cope with a situation that we need alternative information and we need to just do practical things. Venus is entering Leo on the very same day. Mars is in Taurus. Let's see if Mars and Uranus are in conjunction. Yeah, Mars and Uranus are in conjunction. That's revolutionary energy. Now, Taurus is not a very progressive or rebellious sign, but when it joins forces with Uranus, When it's in conjunction like that, that will imbue it with some of this rebellious energy. And because we have this conjunction in a fixed sign, it becomes like an immovable object. It's like, I always call it like a steamroller effect, where it's just like unstoppable. And that has kind of mixed, it's a mixed bag, because on the one hand, it's very determined, but on the other hand, it can be like blindly stubborn. So that, so if somebody presents alternative facts and somebody is in this zone where they're determined to do something, they're not going to listen to reason necessarily. So that might not end well, with certain people who are moved to action. The one, and also with Uranus, there can be that erratic tendency where the person decides to do something on the spur of the moment, maybe in the heat of battle. But yeah, I was going to say, but there's no water, but Leo is a fire sign, and that's very passionate. Because of the Leo sun at this time and the Aquarius moon, at every full moon, the sun and moon are opposing one another, and they're in fixed signs. And because Mars is in Taurus, the sun and moon form a square to Mars, and Mars forms a square to Saturn, in addition to that conjunction with Uranus. That is pretty intense, because the square at angle or aspect is very frustrated. It feels this sense of being blocked in some way. So if you have this in your natal chart, you know that the sun square Mars is the person trying to be competitive, trying to prove themselves, and the moon square Mars is anger management issues. So yes, I mean, this can be quite challenging in that regard. I was going to say dangerous. I don't like to be ominous or anything like that. But at any full moon, I can really pick up on full moon energy, because I'll see people, they'll be real bizarre. They come out of the woodwork. These people, some of, they're mainly harmless, but obviously it can get a bit weird, because it's an Aquarius, the sign of the original weirdo, and a celebrated weirdo, because Aquarius doesn't want to be like other people. So, but the sun is opposing it, and the sun is in Leo. Leo is the drama queen. So it can heighten emotions in a very theatrical kind of way. And that can add fuel to the fire. Okay, and of course, Leo's a fire sign. So I was thinking, okay, what day of the week is this? Okay, this is going to be on Thursday night. But what I have seen lately, because I'm in the Northern Hemisphere and this is our summer, is that my partner and I went downtown last week, and it was a Tuesday, and he and I were walking down some street where people were dining al fresco, outside and stuff. And it was a Tuesday night, and it might as well have been a Saturday night. People were drinking alcohol. They were just carrying on like, it was a weekend. So the fact that this is Thursday nights in the summer can be the beginning of the weekend. So I was thinking maybe it would be safer because it's actually on a weekday, but like what we would call a school night. Just talking about a work. The following day is a work day, but not necessarily so, especially since August is the last gasp of summer in the Northern Hemisphere, and people may be trying to kind of squeeze every last bit out of it. So there could be something in the collective, something in the news, with Mercury and Virgo that we hear about. And by the way, when I say Virgo, actually Gemini is more of the news and the media and things like that. But because Aquarius is connected to the internet, we can just kind of include that like some kind of internet rumor or something that's really true that everyone finds out about on the internet, and people can be very reactive. So I would say at this time and at all full moons, emotions are heightened. This is a supermoon, so it could be more heightened as well emotionally. So, what can you do about this? Well, you should never act on emotion in life ever, because it can be very rash and it could be actually the wrong thing to do. When you're emotional, you're not necessarily thinking clearly. And if there is something on the news, and if it even if it upsets you, if it's some kind of disclosure that is very uh, upsetting, that doesn't mean that you should be in the streets about it. That some of these things could be engineered, socially engineered, to get people riled up so that they are outraged. Um, Sometimes there will be this prominent death that will occur, or some other kind of injustice, and people will be very reactive, and they will play right into the hands of the people who are setting this up so that they can get that kind of chaos going. So you can stay above the fray at all times. And what can this be good for? Well, I think one of the big ones is a social media fast. And well, I said social media, but an internet fast in general. Even things that are not social media. Um, how many times do you just spend all this time on stuff online instead of doing something like getting in touch with nature? Maybe there are people in your life that you really do want to touch base with, but you say, "Oh, I didn't have enough time to do it," but you had enough time to be online. That's something you had enough time to do. I have noticed younger people, I would say 20 somethings, reading books. The other day I was walking through the park. There was like this couple in a hammock, and one of them was reading a book, like a hard cover, or like an actual physical book. The male was doing so, and the female was knitting or crocheting. And I thought, this is like, what a throwback. And it's like, I love that kind of retro vibe. So, doing other things besides staring at a screen. The opposite of embracing technology is being a Luddite, being anti technology. And I bet you there are some Aquarians who, being the contrarians that they are very anti technology. But, yeah, trying to maybe taking up hobbies that uh, really can make you feel like you are nourished by them. Or meditation is another thing that you can do, because Aquarius is an air sign, and air signs are connected to the intellect, and the moon is intuitive. So how do we transcend the intellect is through meditation. It's not to dumb people down so they're not thinking, it's to harness the thoughts. It's to be able to watch the thoughts rather than identify with them. And tuning into the collective maybe a mass meditation. I don't know if they're going to be doing something like that during that full moon. But in any case, I hope that you enjoyed this. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.